All right, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to the Omega Tri-County Active Transportation Plan virtual public meeting. This is for Coshocton, Holmes, and Tuscarawas Counties. My name is Megan Carmel, and I am the Transportation Planner and GIS Coordinator at Omega. So before we get started, we did want to let you know that we are recording this meeting. So if there are other folks who were not able to attend live, the recording will be available on our Facebook page, as well as YouTube and the Omega website. And also, please feel free, anytime during the presentation, you can submit any questions you may have into the chat pod, and we'll be able to address those during our open Q&A at the end of the meeting. So just a quick run through of the agenda. The purpose of this meeting is to review our draft Tri-County Active Transportation Plan, including the purpose of the plan as well as the content of the plan. And then we'll be asking for public comments on the plan. So before we dive into that, we'll give a brief overview of Omega and who we are as an organization. And after the plan overview, we'll have time for any comments or questions you may have at the end. So just a quick overview of Omega and who we are as an organization. So we are a local development district and a council of governments with 10 counties and 12 city governments that we work with. And of our 10 counties, Belmont and Jefferson counties are not included in the Regional Transportation Planning Organization because they're covered by other metropolitan planning organizations. And of our 12 city governments, Martins Ferry, St. Clairsville, Steubenville, and Toronto are also not included in the RTPO, but they are also covered by MPOs. However, these are included in the Omega region for community and economic development assistance. So some of the services we provide as part of our mission to provide a pathway to enhance community and economic growth in our region include planning assistance as well as funding and grant assistance. And as I mentioned previously, we're also a regional transportation planning organization, or an RTPO, which is kind of the service umbrella that the active transportation falls under. And as an RTPO, we do provide a range of short-range planning, regional transportation planning, and technical services. So today we're focusing on the active transportation plan, but we also provide short and long-range regional planning services, as well as GIS services, safety analyses, traffic counts, and grant writing services. So what is active transportation? Well, for the purposes of this plan, active transportation is essentially any non-motorized form of transportation. So in this plan, that mainly includes walking, biking, and buggy travel. Basically, anything other than a motor vehicle would be included. Coshocton, Holmes, and Tuscarawas counties see a significant number of non-motorized road users each day, including a large Amish population. So that's why we chose to focus on these three counties for the plan. So our long-term vision for the plan is to develop a safe and connected multimodal system throughout the Tri-County region for people of all ages and abilities. And in order to meet that vision, we've identified these 4 goals to help us get there, which are to improve and advance safety through infrastructure and educational resources, construct accessible sidewalks, bicycle lanes, buggy lanes, and trails, to promote and encourage healthy alternatives to driving, and to boost community and economic development. Now, as we start looking into the why behind this plan, this first map paints a pretty clear picture, especially to those who are already familiar with the region. So this is illustrating the active transportation need score, with 1 being less need and 4 being the highest need. So this score was developed by ODOT and is based on the percentage of the population that may be vulnerable to unsafe or unreliable bike and pedestrian networks. So these are things like high minority population, high percentage of youth or elderly population, high percentage of people living below the poverty line, limited English proficiency, or a high percentage of zero vehicle households. And as I mentioned earlier, we have a large and growing Amish population in much of this region. So not only do we know that a large portion of the population already walks, bikes, and travels by buggy every day on the roadways in this region, but the data shown here on this map is a further indication of the need for safe walking, biking, and buggy routes. Level of traffic stress, or LTS, is another indicator of the active transportation user experience. Traffic stress is the perceived sense of danger or how comfortable a user feels while walking or biking on a particular roadway. So we only have data through ODOT available for roadways or facilities on the state and U.S. bike route system currently, but this may help us as we move forward with implementing this plan on where we may want to focus some of our infrastructure planning efforts. So according to this data, approximately 60% of the Tri-County area's state and U.S. bike route system has an LTS of 3 or 4, which is medium to high stress, which is indicated in orange and red on the map. Some of the areas you see with an LTS of 1 or 2 in green are on the designated shared use paths like the Holmes County Trail or on low traffic volume or low speed roadways. So we also have an inventory of all the active transportation related crashes over the last 3 years. So these include any crashes involving pedestrians, bicyclists, buggies, or other animals with riders, or any other type of non-motorist. So what you see here is just a snapshot of the legend for the next map to help you understand what you're looking at. So we have the crash type indicated by various symbols and the crash severity indicated by color. So red is fatal, yellow is serious injury, orange is any other type of injury, and blue is property damage only or no injury. So for instance, if you see a red diamond, that would indicate a fatal pedestrian crash. So this is taking a look at that map. This is the map of the crashes involving a pedestrian, bicyclist, buggy, or other non-motorist over the last 3 years. And we're seeing a high concentration of crashes in many of the areas that we would expect due to the higher densities of Amish populations, like in eastern Holmes County, as well as northwestern Tuscarawas County and northeast Coshocton County, as well as some of the denser population areas like Dover and New Philly and Coshocton. But we are seeing crashes, including fatalities and serious injuries, scattered across the entire Tri-County region, so this is a problem across each county. And in total, over just the last 3 years, we did see 166 total active transportation crashes, which equates to nearly 63% of all active transportation crashes within the 8-county Omega RTPO region. So we're seeing the vast majority of active transportation crashes happening just within these 3 counties. So this map shows zero vehicle households by block group. And if you look at the percentages here, we can see that these are not small numbers. We're looking at close to 1/3 of the Tri-County area, with over 1/4 of the population not having access to a vehicle. So these households are almost certainly going to be walking, biking, or traveling by buggy every day. So this is just further demonstrating the need for safe alternatives to driving in these areas. This next map is looking at commuters age 16 and up by census tract who walk to work. So if we look at the dark green area in eastern Holmes County, we see between 9 and 10% of workers walking in just those census tracts. So based on the American Community Survey data that we have here, each of those 4 census tracts has about 2,000 workers or more. So we're talking over 800 people walking to work every day just in those 4 census tracts. So even though the percentage looks small when you look at the legend, when you compare those to the total population, it's not so insignificant. And then this map is looking at commuters who bike to work. So again, in the darkest green area, we're looking at nearly 350 workers commuting by bike every day in just that one census tract. So based on these last 2 maps, we're seeing a significant portion of the population walking and biking as their normal mode of transportation to work every day. And we also wanted to note that many of these roads in this area are also filled with tourists in Amish country who may be unfamiliar with seeing so many bicyclists, buggies, and pedestrians on the roadway. So this is just another important safety issue that we want to consider in these areas. So this map is taking a look at the current active transportation network in the Tri-County region. We have 3 state and 2 US bike routes that run through the region. And these are colored by facility type, which includes paved shoulders, shared lanes, and shared use paths. We also have bike and pedestrian projects and any other known active transportation facility throughout the region. Those are colored by facility type as well. So much of this information came from ODOT's database, but we also have other known active transportation facilities highlighted in green throughout the RTPO. So as you can see, each county does have some type of active transportation infrastructure already existing, but there are some obvious major gaps throughout the system. And given the heavy reliance of active transportation in these counties, dedicated facilities as well as educational resources for both motorists and non-motorists are crucial to avoid further injuries and fatalities on the roadways. So this is a snapshot of the approximate location of all the Amish schools whose location data was publicly available. In total, we're seeing 102 known Amish schools on this map throughout the Tri-County area. And most of these schools are located along high-speed rural roadways, which often have no bike or pedestrian facilities. So as part of this plan, we're working with the Northeast Coshocton County Infrastructure Connection on a Safe Routes to School initiative, which would make walking and biking safer and easier for school-aged children in the Amish community. And this initiative will expand to the greater Tri-County area in future funding cycles. As part of the planning process, we also had a public survey, which was able to help us understand the needs and challenges with walking, biking, and buggy travel along the roadways in the region. So this input from the public, it directly informed the content of the plan, as well as how we want to implement the plan moving forward. So based on the results shown here, we found that most respondents found it at least challenging to walk, bike, or buggy in their community. And when asked what would improve your walking experience, we found that more or improved sidewalks, trails, and paths were highest on the list of improvements, with education for drivers and pedestrians important as well. So based on these results, infrastructure improvements as well as education for both drivers and non-motorists will go a long way in making walking and biking safer and more enjoyable. And when asked the same question about the biking and buggy experience, we saw that designated bike and buggy lanes was the top improvement by a landslide, including off-road paths and trails, with education again being a top concern. So similar results seen here for bike and buggy experience. So throughout the planning process, we had a series of stakeholder meetings with individuals one-on-one, with each county and their Safe Communities coalitions, and as a large group to start identifying the most pressing needs within each county or community. And from those meetings, we developed a working list of the needs that were identified. So this map here is showing a visual representation of those needs. All needs are highlighted with the red dashed line or a red star. And red stars are areas of interest that have needs like new trails or safety studies, but don't necessarily have a specific project location identified yet until further studies are completed at those locations. So more details on each of these needs shown on the map here can be found in the needs section of the draft plan. We also have these needs categorized by rural areas, as well as incorporated areas like cities and villages, and special areas for each county, since each of these community types has unique and varying needs. So some of the needs include bike and buggy lanes along some of your major state routes like State Route 39 and State Route 93, as well as focusing on some broader infrastructure efforts in the Northeast Coshocton County townships, as well as the southern Tuscarawas County townships. Incorporated areas like Coshocton and Millersburg are in need of some sidewalk and trail improvements. But again, these are all outlined in the draft plan itself. So taking a look at some of the recommendations highlighted in this map here were developed from the needs identified during the stakeholder meetings. Rural and incorporated area projects are again outlined separately in the plan, and this map is showing each recommended facility by color. So bike and buggy lanes are depicted in purple, multi-use paths and trails are shown in teal, sidewalks are in red, and other projects are shown in gold. We also did include any existing active transportation facilities and parks to show where potential connections would be. Details on each of these recommendations are also outlined in the plan. So as you can see, there's lots of bike and buggy lane recommendations throughout the counties, as well as some sidewalk additions in your incorporated areas, just to start getting into a more complete active transportation network throughout these counties. So our main goal for the plan is to use it as a guide and kind of a launching off point to start prioritizing some of the project recommendations and start assisting communities in going after funding sources to complete those projects. So as part of our increased education goal that we talked about earlier, we developed a bike safety brochure, which I will show a snapshot of next. But that highlights important safety tips for bicyclists that are specific to the Tri-County region. And since last year, we have also been working with Jacobs and Arcadis Consulting Groups to develop an Omega Regional Safety Plan, which is geared toward improving local road safety throughout the 8-county Omega RTPO region. And active transportation is a focus area of that plan. So utilizing both of these plans in conjunction with one another is really helpful in securing that much needed funding throughout the region. So we also have an entire section dedicated to the various relevant grants and funding programs that are available to assist with the implementation of this plan. So here we're showing a snapshot of those funding sources in this table, but we also have a more detailed information about each of these programs in the plan itself. So some of the funding sources are ODOT's Transportation Alternatives and Safe Routes to School programs, which are really dedicated to improving active transportation specifically, as well as some of the other state and federal programs like ODNR's Clean Ohio Trails Fund and Recreational Trails Program, CDBG, and OPWC, and any of these may be able to assist with at least portions of a project. And so we can utilize multiple funding sources to help fund a project if we get creative, and we're also able to assist communities through that process as well. So here we have a snapshot of the bike safety brochure that I mentioned earlier. And we really wanted to make something that was informative and focused on safety without being too cumbersome, and was also specific to the region. So as you look at this, we have things like a quick safety check before riding your bike, how to wear a properly fitting helmet, how to safely use bike lanes and abide by all vehicular traffic laws, proper hand signaling, staying visible even in dark conditions, and staying alert. And then all the photos shown here throughout the brochure are from the Tri-County area as well. So everything that we've shown today is available on our Tri-County Active Transportation Plan webpage, which is at the link shown below at omegadistrict.org/tri-county. And so we really love your feedback on any part of this plan. My contact information is available at this webpage as well, and at the end of the presentation today. So you can find a copy of the draft plan by clicking on the Tri-County Active Transportation draft link in the middle of the webpage. We'll also have the recording of today's meeting on this page. And we did want to also note that we are able to mail out printed copies of the plan for anyone who doesn't have access to the internet. So please let us know if that's something that we can help with. We will have a 45-day comment period, so if you have any comments or questions, please send those to us by June 7th. Again, my name is Megan Carmel, and my contact information is shown here. Feel free to send us comments by email, by phone, or by mail. And again, you can view more information, including a copy of the draft plan, on the website shown here as well. So with that, thank you everyone again for attending, and I'll take any questions that may have come up. We'll start with the chat pod and then kind of open it up for anybody to shout out questions. No questions in the chat pod? Okay. So feel free to unmute yourself if you are on Zoom or on the phone if you have any questions you wanted to ask live.
It's going to help with tourism, because if there's all these places that people can ride, that will attract tourism to the area more. People do love to get out and visit places by bike, and I think that's a great thing. I know in Tuscarawas County, tourism, and in Holmes County, that's a huge part of our economy, so improving tourism is a good thing here.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that feedback. And, I can speak just from personal experience that I'm a big biker and like to ride on the township roads out there. So any way to make that safer, even if it's, systemic improvements with signage or lighting, or even some of those bigger infrastructure things like bike and buggy lanes and additional trails, improvements like that, it's kind of what this plan is geared toward. But yeah, and that really helps meet that economic development goal that we wanted to see. So tourism is a huge component with this. So thank you for that. Oh yeah, and we did want to mention that a lot of the recommendations, as well as some of the planned routes that you'll see on the maps, came directly from the Tuscarawas County Trail and Green Space Plan, so we're definitely trying to support that as well.
Hi Megan, it's Sue from AEP Ohio. How are you?
Hi Sue, good. How are you?
Hello everyone. I had a question with regard to the lighting, since you might have electrical conduit running. Has there been any consideration given to ports where you could plug in, to charge your phone, or even, I don't know how these electric bikes charge, but even to be able to charge the bikes?
We haven't specifically looked into that yet, but that's a great comment, and we know that e-bikes are becoming more and more prevalent. So, education on that, we might want to talk more with you about that as part of AEP. But making sure that all road users are safe, including e-bikes, and you're not having an e-bike, I guess, stuck on the side of the road or in need of charging. So yeah, that's a good comment. So we'll probably follow up with you on that. Are there any other questions? All right. Well, again, thank you everyone so much for attending. If you have any other additional questions or comments that pop up that you may not have thought of, feel free to reach out. But have a wonderful rest of your day. Thanks so much.